Oh, well.
There's not a single piece of media that is more significant to my YouTube channel than Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. My most viewed videos of me using footage from this game after all. Putting that aside, so many of my videos use this game for material. With that in mind, you might be wondering how I feel about the game. Do I hate it like the majority of people seem to? Or am I one of the few that thinks this game is an underrated classic that is unjustly criticized for its time? Well, my history with this game begins when I was a young lad. I remember going to GameStop, really wanting to get a Nintendo 64 game. While there, I saw they had two Mortal Kombat games for the system. These games were Mortal Kombat 4 and Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. I wasn't able to get both, so I had to choose. Mythology seemed so interesting, being a game about a specific character. For that reason, I picked it up. I can't be sure since it was so long ago, but on the way home I think I spent all the time imagining what the game might be like. Would it be a fighting game like all the others, but with the only playable character being Sub-Zero? Or would it be a different genre altogether? When I finally got home, the first thing I did was begin playing it. To my excitement, it wasn't just a fighting game, it was something else. But I couldn't get past the first level and I put it down. It won't be until sometime later that I finally beat that level after much persistence. I also probably used an infinite lives cheat. Unfortunately, even with the cheats, I never made it past the second stage. So, what do I really think of this game? To put it simply, I hate it. Like, I really hate it. From a gameplay perspective, this game is impressively awful. If you've only seen the reviews, you have a basic idea of what this game's problems are. You know about the bad controls, you know about the pitfalls, the death traps, and you know that the game can be unfair. Yet, the reviews I've seen don't really tell you how bad things are. I finally played through the full game recently. I have experienced the worst of it. I should say I did play through it using save states. I'm not proud of it, but I'm also not too ashamed of it since the game just blatantly cheats. Just to rattle off a few, there's so many beginner's traps and instant deaths. One of the most egregious examples I can think of is the death trap pit in the Earth Temple. If you've seen the AVGN review, you're familiar with this. But if your only experience is that review, you don't know how long it takes for the death trap to crush you. I went down that pit out of curiosity, climbed down the rope all the way to the bottom, and I saw it was a dead end without the key. I tried going back up, but I couldn't grab the rope. I fruitlessly tried grabbing it for a solid 20 seconds. I thought I was soft-locked until I saw the ceiling slowly coming down to crush me. It's like the game itself was saying, "Oh, you wanted to explore? Fuck you!" Want to know something that's even more fucked up? If your jump isn't perfect and you fall slightly too low on the rope, the ceiling will come down on you anyway, so you better be precise or you'll pay the price. Even worse is you need to explore to progress. Throughout the Earth Temple, there are crevices that open and close. If you fall down one, you usually find yourself getting a spike in the stomach. However, some of these pits contain hidden items. One of them is even mandatory to fall down to progress, yet the same level actively discourages exploration at the same time. Trust me, you will need a guide for this game. I tried playing without a guide and I couldn't do it. It's not like I was alone either, as I was actually streaming this game to friends as I was playing it. There were so many moments where I got stuck and not one of us knew what to do without looking up a guide. You know it's bad when multiple people are stumped like that. One of the more ridiculous moments like this was at the Wind Temple. You see, there's this tornado there that you must go through to progress. However, the tornado automatically lifts you up to a different floor than where you need to go. If you try to exit before getting to that floor, Sub-Zero will enter his fall state and die either by falling down a pit or hitting the ground. Many suggestions were tossed out, such as attempting to grab onto the ledge of the platform I was jumping off of, then leaping off of that, or entering and then exiting tornado strategically as to not enter Sub-Zero's fall state. Unfortunately, none of these worked. Eventually, we all got fed up and just looked up a guide. The solution was so simple, none of us would have thought of it. How do you think you do this? I'll tell you how. You just press down. Sounds obvious, right? Yet, there's nothing there that tells you to even try this. As soon as you enter the tornado, all control feels like it's taken away from you outside of going left or right, since you're just lifted up automatically. I don't know. Maybe we're all just stupid. Still, I think it would have been better if the tornado would just hover you in place and you could hold up to go up or down to go down. As is, again, it feels like the control is outside of the player's hands. But the most egregious moment in the game has to be the Netherrealm prison level. I know I'm saying egregious a lot, but folks, trust me when I tell you there's so many egregious things in this game. There are these elevator lifts, right? In most games, how do you use an elevator? You just press up or down. Not so in this game. Try as I might, I couldn't even get the elevator to move. So something interesting about these elevators is that you need to get key cards to move them. So if you get a 1 key card, the 1 part of the G1 sign behind the elevator lights up. However, the G part is not lit up. So I thought I was missing a G key card. I run around the level, see if I'm missing anything. I couldn't find shit. Once again, I finally give in as one of my friends looks up a guide. This is something I never would have guessed in my life. Nobody else I was streaming with would have guessed it either. It is one of the most cryptic things I've ever seen in a video game. To move the elevator up, you must hold the L1 button and press high kick. For context, the L1 button is the action button. You use it to grab items, so that makes a little sense. However, the high kick button? In what world is that intuitive? And yes, I know the manual tells you to do this, but that doesn't matter though. And what if you're renting the game or you bought it used without the manual? You wouldn't know what to do unless you looked it up. Why can't you just press up like you would in any other game? Hell, even holding L1 and pressing up would have made sense too. Why does it have to be such a weird combination? I think one of the most annoying elements of this game are the enemies. The AI switches from insanely competent to completely brain dead at the flip of a switch. Sometimes they'll attack you instantly, knowing everything you're gonna do. Other times they'll just stand there waiting to be hit. Not helping matters are the respawn rates. It'd be one thing if they were consistent, but the enemies sometimes don't spawn at all. Other times, one runs in as soon as the previous one is down. It's so unpredictable and unfair you can't really form strategies other than run. You know what's worse? They can also shoot projectiles off screen, so have fun cautiously and slowly stepping forward until you see one of those coming. The bosses can also be really frustrating. I think the one I hated the most was Fujin, who likes to spend a lot of his time floating in the air, which means unless you have a directional ice blast or mid-air ice blast unlocked, you can't freeze him most of the time. Trying to attack him while he's flying just isn't worth it, which means it fucking sucks when he won't come down to fight you. All of his mid-air attacks are also just annoying to deal with. Of course, you've probably also heard about the part at the end of the fight where Fujin spins a big tornado that sucks you in if you don't crouch near the furthest ledge. After doing so, you latch onto it. Most people wouldn't guess to do this, and this game mechanic is only used once, too. Funnily enough, I actually somehow cheesed this part just by running, slowing down, and then running again until Fujin exploded. The Earth Temple boss is another one that's annoying. The strategy is that you have to bait him to a certain spot of the arena. Then you slide under him, pull a lever, and a part of the ceiling drops on his head. However, the place you have to bait him to is just fucked. It's not to the center of the stage, nor is it furthest to the right. It's in this small specific area just between the right and center. If you don't bait him to that exact spot, the ceiling will fall, but it'll miss him. That also means you have to wait until it goes back up before you get another chance. It takes a solid couple of seconds. It's like they designed this boss to be as frustrating as humanly possible. Ultimately, I think there's one fundamental flaw with this game that prevents it from being good. That flaw is that the game doesn't know what it wants to be. It's this eclectic mix of genres that don't gel well together. It's an exploration-based, beat-em-up platformer with RPG elements and fighting game controls. They went into this game with too many ideas, and all of them feel half-baked. The exploration is cryptic at best and downright obtuse at worst. The platform is bogged down by the controls. The RPG elements are only used to unlock ice powers. The fighting mechanics are fine, but the AI and enemy respawn rates make it so you'd rather just run past everything rather than fight. It does a lot, but none of it is done well. I just feel they were too ambitious with this project, especially with it being the first MK spinoff. Maybe if it were just a beat-em-up, or maybe if it was just a game based on exploration, or if it was just a platformer. But to have it be all these things, it's too much. That's not to say everything is bad, though. Of course, the cutscenes are a delight. You can tell that everyone on the set was having a lot of fun. In particular, Richard DeVizio is still the definitive Quan Chi in my eyes. Dude absolutely owned the role. The way he plays the character just constantly radiates a smug energy that fits Quan Chi perfect. The story is pretty good as well, acting as a solid prequel to MK4 that establishes a lot of elements that become important in that game. Something I find interesting about it is how it perfectly foreshadows Sub-Zero's eventual descent into Noob Saibot, completely by accident. Keep in mind, this game was written by John Tobias, long before there was even a connection between Sub-Zero and Noob. Yet, the way Raiden talks about how Sub-Zero is going down a dark path that will eventually lead to corruption feels like it was written specifically to lead into his eventual transformation. His story becoming intertwined with Quan Chi and Shinnok only adds to this. It's honestly hard to believe it wasn't intentional, but it wasn't. If I had to complain, and you know I've got something to complain about, I do think it's a bit of a shame that we don't see more of the actual Lin Kuei in this game. It would have been nice to see Sector and Cyrax before they were cyborgs, or Smoke, or even an appearance from Kuai before he took up the Sub-Zero name. Then again, they might not have had enough actors or enough of a costume budget to do this, so I understand why they wouldn't. The music composed by Dan Forden is also really good. Almost every stage has a cool, atmospheric sound that usually matches the environment and mood well. Not every track is a winner, though. In particular, the Bridge of Immortality's track isn't necessarily bad, but it's really unfitting for the stage. I like the melancholy, desolate sound it has, but, well, I'll get to why it doesn't fit later on. I also really like the graphics and art direction for the most part. This is the last MK game to use digitized sprites of actual actors, so it's the end of an era in some ways. I'm honestly really impressed with the costumes in particular. I think Sub-Zero is the best ninja costume of the classic MK games, and Quan Chi's costume is also impressively elaborate looking. While you only see him in a total of 2 cutscenes, it's worth noting that Raiden has a costume that has a lot more detailing than he had in either MK1 or 2. It's a shame we didn't see this costume digitized as a sprite for this game. The stages are, for the most part, at least pleasant to look at, outside the occasional eyesore like the polygonal windmill platforms in the Wind Temple. Actually, a lot of the Wind Temple is pretty ugly now that I think about it. That level aside, I think the game has a solid aesthetic. One thing worth noting is the general look of the Netherrealm, which is completely different than what had been seen in the series before in UMK3 and every game afterwards, too. The Netherrealm in this game has a sort of foggy and industrial look to it. It's cold and metallic, rather than fire and brimstone. It's something I didn't dig at first, but then I checked the manual. Apparently the Netherrealm looks like this because Shinnok was trying to make it more resemble Earthrealm, the realm he so desired. Once this was explained, the more I came to like the aesthetic. It's so dystopian and overwhelming at first, but then you realize it's nothing more but a hollow replica of a realm Shinnok couldn't have. I would say the best level in the entire game is the Fire Temple. It's quite the painless ordeal, with very few leaps of faith or insta-kill death traps. It has a little exploration, but none of it feels obtuse. Everything comes together to form a level that's actually playable and, dare I say, fun? The boss of the level, the Fire God, is actually the most frustrating part since he's immune to your special moves, but he's not too bad. Mostly. Also, if you're not convinced yet, the yelps Sub-Zero lets out when he gets burnt are the funniest screams in the game, by far. They're so funny. However, my favorite level, at least in every way that isn't gameplay related, might be the Water Temple. That dimly lit, blue-tinted look just vibes with me. The low-key, mildly unsettling music helps. It also has one of my favorite bosses in the game. The Water God is kind of generic looking, being a naked member of the Blue Man Group, / Dr. Manhattan, / any number of jokes I could crack. However, I really like how when you hit him, his head splashes off, or if you freeze him, he shatters when you uppercut him and he has to reform. Those are neat visual effects. After the Earth God and Fujin, it's also just nice to find a straightforward boss that isn't constantly flying, or you have to pull some dumb trick to defeat it. That being said, actually playing the Water Temple is best described as a miserable experience. Nearly every room looks the same, making it incredibly hard to navigate without a map. Enemies like to just hang around the entrance to each hall, which makes getting into them a pain. A lot of time is just spent climbing up or down ropes too, which is just tedious. Of course, it also has the obligatory blind pitfalls. It wouldn't be this game without them. However, if you use a map, then the level is better. Still kind of frustrating, but nowhere near as bad as it was. Maybe just including a map feature would have done a lot for this game. To be even kinder to the level, the screams Sub-Zero lets out when he gets shocked by the eels are also pretty funny. That doesn't make up for the level being a pain in the ass, but it makes me laugh at least. So, even the Water Temple has some positives. You might be thinking, what do I feel is the worst level in the whole game? The Wind Temple can fuck itself, but I wouldn't even call that the worst level in the game. It's close, but I think there's one that's even worse. For me, I think the worst level was level 7, the Bridge of Immortality. This was a level that my friends and I didn't think would be so hard when I first went into it. If I only knew. Basically, you have to defeat 4 giant bosses to collect keys, since this game is just so focused on collecting keys. It is both somehow easier and harder than it sounds. Easier because 2 of the bosses have really simple patterns, that once you figure them out, won't pose you any trouble. Harder because trying to find one of the bosses is unreasonably difficult and cryptic. You see, at the beginning of the stage, you have to fall down a very specific pit that drops you down to a pathway that leads you to the first boss. There is nothing indicating that you have to go down this path. Would it have hurt them to put something there to at least hint at there being a platform in this pit? Maybe one of those lamps seen all around the level peeking out from the pit or something. The other pits in the pathway do this, but the first one? Nah. This entire game is just one big guessing game. You either have to fall down that pit by accident, actively fall down pits in the hopes of finding out where to go, or just look it up in a guide. It's just bad game design. So, you go down this pathway to confront the first boss, and it's... Hold the fucking phone, is that a dinosaur? A fire-breathing dinosaur? What? What is this doing in another realm? I think the problem with this level's music is best exemplified here. You have this melancholy theme playing as you fight a fucking T-Rex. It's so tonally dissonant, it's unintentionally funny. Also, the boss itself is just out of place. Why is the boss the guy riding a fire-breathing T-Rex? Were they that strapped for ideas? Ah, jeez, they must have been, since the other bosses in this level are just 3 identical giant robots. 2 with flamethrowers and 1 with a machine gun. The robots also just reuse the same attack patterns as the previous robot boss. The flamethrower guys are easy. The fire has 0 knockback and it's easy to exploit their pattern. The machine gun guy is tougher, since his weapon actually has knockback and it can eat away at your health like a motherfucker. Also, the robots just feel out of place like the T-Rex. I know this is a more technologically advanced NetherRealm, but I don't know. Giant robots just clash with Shinnok and Quan Chi's whole sort of aesthetic to me. So, yeah, this level just sucks. Like I said, it's the worst level in the game. The music doesn't fit, most of it is just made up of reused bosses, the level design is cryptic, and the aesthetic isn't anything you haven't seen in previous NetherRealm levels. This is the definition of a filler level. I don't have much to say about the final level. It's like the Water Temple in that it's just a confusing labyrinth that really needs a map. You also fight Quan Chi's 3 bodyguards here, those being Kia, Jitaka, and Serena. The boss fights are fine, though it does remind me how frustrating it is that the bosses take less damage than you. It's like playing a regular MK game with a health handicap. What really makes this level bad is that each of the girls have 3, you guessed it, keys!
3 magical keys!
Not only do you need to gather these keys, you then need to place them in different specific areas in a specific order. If you've made it this far into the game, you probably already accept that you need a guide, but it's still stupid. Once you do that, you teleport to Quan Chi for his boss fight. It's actually really cool seeing Quan Chi as a digitized 2D sprite. He has some frustrating moves to deal with, but he isn't so hard. If you spared Serena earlier, she'll even come in to help you when Quan Chi is low enough on health. After Quan Chi is dealt with, you have to fight Shinnok. I really hope he spared Serena, since not only does she help you during the Quan Chi's fight, the cutscene before Shinnok's fight only plays if you did. You wouldn't want to miss out on Shinnok making the most smug face of all time, would you? Actually, it's weird how Shinnok's role in the story is minimized if you kill Scorpion and Serena. If you kill Scorpion at the beginning of the game, then you have a rematch with him in the NetherRealm prison. If you don't, then Sub-Zero meets Shinnok instead. It's honestly really funny how Shinnok in this cutscene just sounds like a kindly old grandfather, yet in the fight against him he sounds completely different.
Escape. Oh, I'll be leaving this realm shortly. But first I must play Raiden's game.
Now you will feel the forces of darkness. No! The amulet! No!
As I was saying, if you kill Serena and Scorpion, then Shinnok just kinda comes out of nowhere at the end. Yeah, he was mentioned by Quan Chi before, but it still feels really anticlimactic. Not helping is that the final boss against Shinnok is just freezing him, stealing his amulet, and then running into a portal after he transforms into a hideous demon. You could try fighting him in this demonic form, but trust me buddy, it's not worth it, as it requires having a lot of healing potions, and then spamming this one powerful ice move multiple times. It's too hard, and you get a blooper reel to celebrate your victory, which I mean, is cool and all, but just look it up on YouTube. Or if you really just need to unlock it in a video game, then just play Mortal Kombat Deception and unlock it in that game's crypt, because it's there too. Like I said, there's nothing really encouraging you to defeat Shinnok outside like bragging rights, and I don't think anybody cares if you say, oh yeah, I beat Shinnok in Mortal Kombat Mythologies, his demon form specifically. Like, nobody's gonna be impressed by that. Well, I'd be impressed, but I'd also think you wasted your time. Back to Mythologies, I think that just about sums up my thoughts. I hate this game, yet I also kind of love it. It's the perfect bad game. Every frustrating element and bad design choice just comes together to make a game that is fun to laugh at with friends. When I played this game with my friends watching it was miserable, but it was also stupidly funny. Before I go, I'd like to apologize if this video came across as unstructured. I just had a lot of thoughts on this game, things I feel like aren't talked about enough. I hope you enjoyed the video despite that, though, and I think of you as a swell person, and I also thank you if you watched this far. Oh, this ending's a mess. Let's wrap this up before I really fuck it up, and with that, I've got nothing left to say. See you later.